The stars looked different through a cracked helmet visor. Commander Ben Torres floated in the silence of space, watching the last pieces of his ship drift away like metal snowflakes against the cosmic black. The battle was over. The Terran defense fleet was gone. He was alone. His oxygen meter blinked red numbers that made his chest tight. 23 minutes of air left. Not enough time to reach the nearest human outpost. Not even close. Ben closed his eyes and tried to remember his sister's face, his mother's smile, the way coffee smelled on Earth mornings. A shadow fell across his helmet. When he opened his eyes, a massive ship blocked out the stars. It was like nothing humans had ever built. The hull curved and twisted like the shell of some giant insect, black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Symbols carved deep into its surface glowed with pale green fire. Zalani ship. Ben had seen them in intelligence reports but never up close. The insectoid empire that controlled 12 star systems and was moving toward human space. The species that had sent demands to Earth 3 months ago, demands that the Human Council had tried to negotiate. Metal claws reached out from the alien ship and grabbed Ben's suit. He did not fight as they pulled him inside. Fighting would waste oxygen, and he had bigger problems now. The airlock cycled with sounds like breaking bones. When the inner door opened, Ben found himself face to face with his first living Zalani. The creature stood 7 feet tall on 4 legs that ended in sharp points. Its upper body was vaguely humanoid but covered in chitinous plates that shifted colors from black to deep green. 4 arms moved with precise control, and compound eyes regarded him with alien intelligence. "Human," the Zalani said in perfect English. Its voice was like wind through broken glass. "You will come." Ben followed because he had no choice. The corridors of the ship were tall and narrow, designed for beings who moved differently than humans. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins that provided the only light. Everything smelled of copper and ozone. They brought him to a vast chamber where dozens of Zalani watched from elevated platforms. At the center, on a throne made from what looked like crystallized bone, sat a figure that made Ben's breath catch in his throat. The princess was smaller than the others, maybe 6.5 feet tall, but she commanded attention like gravity commands falling objects. Her carapace was deep purple shot through with veins of silver. Her 4 arms moved with liquid grace, and when she looked at Ben, her compound eyes seemed to see right through him. "I am Princess Vexera of the Third Clutch, heir to the Zalani throne," she said. Her voice was smoother than the others, almost musical. "You are the human commander who led the defense of Station Gamma 7. "I am Commander Ben Torres of the Terran Defense Fleet," Ben replied. He kept his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. "Your fleet fought well for such a young species," the princess continued. "But fighting well and fighting wisely are different things. You lost because you do not understand the nature of strength." Ben said nothing. Around the chamber, the other Zalani made clicking sounds that might have been laughter. "Remove your armor," Princess Vexera commanded. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Ben looked around the chamber, seeing the alien faces watching him, waiting for his response. In his studies of Zalani culture, he had learned enough to know that this moment mattered. In their society, armor was more than protection. It was identity, status, honor. To remove it willingly was to submit completely. "No," Ben said quietly. The clicking sound stopped. The chamber fell silent except for the pulse of the bioluminescent walls. Princess Vexera leaned forward on her throne, her compound eyes reflecting the green light in thousands of tiny mirrors. "I do not think you understand," she said. "I am offering you a choice. Remove your armor as a sign of submission, and I will consider mercy for your species." "I understand perfectly," Ben replied. "And my answer is still no." One of the Zalani on the platforms made a harsh sound and moved forward, but Princess Vexera raised one of her 4 hands to stop him. Her attention remained fixed on Ben. "Interesting," she said. "Tell me, human, what do you know of the Zalani Empire?" Ben chose his words carefully. "I know you have conquered 17 different species. I know your empire spans 12 star systems. I know you believe strength is the only virtue that matters." "Good," the princess nodded. "Then you understand that weakness leads to extinction. For 3 months, your leaders have sent us messages. They speak of peace, of cooperation, of mutual benefit. They offer us resources and technology in exchange for leaving your worlds alone." She paused, her head tilting slightly. "Do you know what this tells us? That humans prefer diplomacy to war. That humans are weak." The princess stood from her throne and began to move down the steps toward Ben. Her 4 legs moved in perfect rhythm, and her 4 arms gestured as she spoke. "When the strong offer terms to the weak accept. When the weak offer terms to the strong, they reveal their fear." Ben watched her approach. Even without weapons, even surrounded by enemies, he felt strangely calm. "Or maybe we believe there are things more important than strength." The princess stopped 3 feet away from him. This close, Ben could see that her compound eyes were not just one color but held depths like looking into dark water. "Such as?" "Hope," Ben said. "Compassion. The belief that different species can find ways to live together without one destroying the other." The chamber erupted in clicking sounds. Some Zalani made hissing noises that sounded like steam escaping from broken pipes. Princess Vexera raised her hands again, and silence returned. "You speak like the children we have conquered," she said. "The Moloch spoke of hope when we took their worlds. The Thitari spoke of compassion when we enslaved their survivors. Words without strength behind them are just noise in the void." Ben met her gaze steadily. "Then why are you talking to me instead of killing me?" For the first time, Princess Vexera seemed surprised. Her compound eyes shifted slightly, and her head tilted at a different angle. Around the chamber, other Zalani made softer clicking sounds. "Because," she said slowly, "you are the first human we have met who does not grovel. The first who looks at certain death and does not beg. This interests me." She began to circle him, her 4 legs moving soundlessly on the chamber floor. "I have studied your species for months. Your leaders send us messages full of pretty words and empty promises. Your soldiers surrender when outnumbered. Your civilians evacuate instead of fighting. Everything about humans suggests a species bred for submission. And yet," she stopped behind him, her voice close to his ear, "here you stand in chains, surrounded by your enemies, facing certain death, and you refuse a simple command. Why?" Ben thought about the question. Why was he refusing? He could remove his armor, tell the princess what she wanted to hear, maybe buy Earth some time. Maybe save lives. It would be logical, practical, smart. But he thought about the people back home. His sister who worked in the orbital hospitals, saving lives without regard for species or origin. His mother who had raised him to believe that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing. The young soldiers under his command who had died fighting against impossible odds because they believed in something bigger than themselves. Because, Ben said finally, there are some things worth more than survival. Princess Vexera moved back to face him. Such as dignity, honor, the right to choose who you are instead of letting others choose for you. The princess was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to laugh. It was not the harsh clicking of the other Zalani but something almost musical, like wind chimes made of bone. "You fascinate me, human," she said. "In our culture, what you call dignity, we call pride. What you call honor, we call strength. But you display these virtues while refusing to show submission. This creates a paradox. She returned to her throne but did not sit. Instead, she stood beside it, one hand resting on its crystallized surface. "I will make you an offer," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "A more generous offer than any human deserves. Remove your armor willingly. Kneel before the throne of the Zalani Empire. Swear loyalty to my house. Do these things, and I will spare your homeworld from the fate that awaits it." Ben felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders like lead. Around the chamber, the other Zalani made approving sounds. This was clearly more mercy than they expected her to show. "What fate?" Ben asked. "In 6 of your months, the Zalani fleet will reach Earth," Princess Vexera replied. 4,000 ships carrying 2 million warriors. "We will take your planet in 3 days. Your people will become slaves, your culture will be erased, your history will be forgotten. Unless you give me a reason to change my mind." Ben closed his eyes. 4,000 ships. The entire human fleet had been maybe 300 vessels, and most of those were exploration ships pressed into military service. Earth had no chance against a force like that. "Why make this offer at all?" he asked. "Because you intrigue me," the princess said. "I want to understand what makes one human so different from the rest. I want to study you, learn from you, discover if your species has hidden depths we have not seen. And if I refuse? Then you die here, your fleet remains destroyed, and Earth burns in 6 months regardless." She spread her 4 arms wide. "But if you accept, your world lives. Your people continue. They become part of the empire, yes, but they survive." Ben opened his eyes and looked around the chamber. Every alien face was watching him, waiting for his decision. He could feel the weight of humanity's future pressing down on him like the gravity of a dying star. "I need time to think," he said. Princess Vexera nodded. "I thought you might. Guards will escort you to quarters appropriate for a guest of the Empire. You have 1 rotation of our world to decide. When next we meet, you will give me your answer." 2 Zalani moved forward and flanked Ben. They were not rough, but their presence made it clear that refusal was not an option. As they led him from the chamber, Ben heard Princess Vexera speaking to her court in their own language, sounds like breaking ice and distant thunder. The quarters they gave him were larger than his cabin aboard his ship had been. The walls were smooth black metal decorated with Zalani script that glowed softly in the dim light. A sleeping platform had been adjusted for human proportions, and there was even a small area with what might have been intended as a desk. A panel in the wall opened, and a tray slid out containing food and water. The food was some kind of protein paste that tasted like nothing, but it was edible. The water was clean and cold. Ben ate methodically, thinking. 1 rotation of a Zalani world. He had no idea how long that was in Earth hours, but it did not matter. The princess was giving him time to come to the obvious conclusion. Accept her offer, save his species, live as her pet study subject. It was logical. It was practical. It was the smart choice. But Ben could not stop thinking about his conversation with the princess. She had said something important, something that revealed more than she might have intended. She wanted to understand what made him different from other humans. That meant she had expectations about how humans should behave, expectations based on limited contact with a species. What if she was wrong about humanity? What if the diplomats who had tried to negotiate were not showing weakness but wisdom? What if the soldiers who had surrendered were not cowards but people trying to save lives? What if everything the Zalani thought they knew about humans was based on misunderstanding? Ben lay down on the sleeping platform and stared at the ceiling. In a few hours, he would have to choose between his pride and his planet. But maybe, just maybe, there was a third option. Something the princess would not expect. Something that might change everything. He closed his eyes and began to plan. Ben woke to the sound of metal chiming against metal. A Zolani guard stood in the doorway of his quarters, all four arms moving in what might have been a respectful gesture. "The rotation is complete," the guard said in its glass-wind voice. "Princess Vexera awaits your decision." Ben sat up slowly. He had not slept much. Most of the time had been spent thinking, planning, trying to understand not just what the princess wanted but why she wanted it. Now the moment had arrived. "I'm ready," he said. The corridors seemed different as they walked back to the throne chamber. More Zolani lined the passages, watching Ben with their compound eyes. Word had clearly spread through the ship about the human who had refused to submit. Some made the clicking sounds that meant amusement. Others remained silent, their attention focused and intense. The throne chamber was packed. Every platform held multiple Zolani, and more stood along the walls. The air hummed with their chittering conversations. When Ben entered, the sound died away until only the pulse of the bioluminescent walls could be heard. Princess Vexera sat on her crystalline throne, but something about her posture seemed different. More alert, perhaps. More interested. Her four arms rested on the armrests of her throne, and her compound eyes tracked Ben's movement across the chamber. "Commander Torres," she said, her musical voice carrying easily through the silence. "Have you reached a decision?" Ben walked to the center of the chamber and stopped at the same spot where he had stood before. Around him, hundreds of alien faces watched and waited. "I have," he said. "Then speak. Will you remove your armor and swear loyalty to the Zolani Empire in exchange for your world's survival?" Ben looked around the chamber slowly, meeting as many gazes as he could. When he spoke, his voice was clear and steady. "Before I answer, I want to tell you a story." Princess Vexera tilted her head. "A story? About humanity. About what we really are." Ben kept his hands at his sides, relaxed but ready. "You said your people have studied us. You've watched our diplomats, our soldiers, our civilians. But I don't think you understand what you've been seeing." Some of the Zolani began making impatient sounds, but the princess raised a hand for silence. "Explain," she said. "You think our diplomats showed weakness by offering to negotiate instead of fighting," Ben continued. "But they weren't afraid. They were hoping. They believed that two intelligent species could find a way to coexist without one destroying the other. That's not weakness. That's strength of a different kind. The strength to ignore reality," one of the Zolani on the platforms called out. Ben turned toward the voice. "The strength to imagine a better reality and work to create it. Your empire has conquered 17 species. How many of those species are thriving now? How many are contributing new ideas, new technologies, new perspectives to make the empire stronger?" The chamber fell quiet again. Ben could see some of the Zolani exchanging glances. "You think our soldiers showed weakness by surrendering when outnumbered," Ben went on. "But they weren't cowards. They were making a choice to preserve life when death served no purpose. That's not weakness either. That's wisdom. Wisdom that leads to slavery," another Zolani hissed. "Only if you choose to make it so," Ben replied. "A species that chooses life over meaningless death is a species that will find ways to survive, to adapt, to eventually overcome any obstacle. Even you." Princess Vexera leaned forward on her throne. "And what of you, human? You have shown neither the hope of your diplomats nor the wisdom of your soldiers. You have shown only stubborn pride." Ben smiled for the first time since his capture. "Have I?" He began to walk slowly around the center of the chamber, his movements deliberate and calm. Every eye followed him. "You want to understand what makes me different from the other humans you've met," he said. "The answer is simple. I'm not different at all. Every human diplomat who offered you terms instead of war, every human soldier who chose surrender over death, every human civilian who evacuated instead of fighting, all of us share the same core belief." "Which is?" Princess Vexera asked. Ben stopped walking and faced her throne directly. "That there are some things more valuable than survival. Some principles more important than life itself." He reached up and began to unfasten his helmet. The chamber erupted in sound. Clicking, hissing, chittering voices rose in excitement. This was what they had come to see. The human finally submitting. The proud alien brought low. But Ben's movements were slow, deliberate. He lifted his helmet off and set it carefully on the floor beside him. Then he began to work on the chest plate of his armor. "I will remove my armor," he announced, his voice carrying over the noise. "But not because you command it. Not because I fear death. Not because I submit to your empire." The sounds from the watching Zalani grew confused, uncertain. This was not the ritual of submission they expected. Ben removed his chest plate and set it beside his helmet. Then the arm guards. Then the leg pieces. Each movement was precise, respectful, ceremonial. "I remove my armor," he continued, "because I choose to. Because sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to be vulnerable. Because true courage is not the absence of fear but the decision to do what is right even when you are afraid." He stood now in only his basic uniform, his armor arranged neatly beside him. Around the chamber, the Zalani had fallen silent again. This was not submission. This was something else entirely. Princess Vexera rose from her throne and walked down the steps toward Ben. Her 4 legs moved with careful precision, and her compound eyes never left his face. "You stand before the assembled might of the Zalani Empire," she said. "You have no armor, no weapons, no hope of escape. Your world faces destruction, your people face slavery, your very existence hangs by a thread. And yet you defy us still." "I don't defy you," Ben replied quietly. "I am trying to show you something you have never seen before." "Which is?" Ben straightened his shoulders and looked directly into her alien eyes. "A human being who would rather die with dignity than live without it. A representative of a species that values honor over survival, truth over comfort, hope over fear." He gestured to his discarded armor. "This equipment has protected me through dozens of battles. It has saved my life more times than I can count. But it is not who I am. It is not what makes me human." Princess Vexera stopped 3 feet away from him. Her 4 arms moved in slow, complex patterns that Ben could not interpret. "Then what does make you human?" she asked. "The choice to stand here, defenseless and surrounded, and refuse to bow," Ben said. "The willingness to face extinction rather than compromise our fundamental beliefs. The knowledge that some things are worth dying for because without them, survival has no meaning." He spread his arms wide, completely open, completely vulnerable. "You can kill me now," he said. "You can destroy Earth in 6 months. You can add humanity to the list of species you have conquered. But you will never make us submit. You will never break our spirit. And someday, somewhere, that spirit will be the seed of your empire's downfall." The chamber was absolutely silent. Even the bioluminescent walls seemed to pulse more slowly, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Princess Vexera circled Ben slowly, studying him from every angle. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more thoughtful. "In our culture," she said, "there is a concept called Velvar. It means, the strength that cannot be taken. We have seen it perhaps a dozen times in our history, always in our own people, never in another species. She stopped in front of him again. You display Veldar, human. In removing your armor by choice rather than command, you have shown warrior's honor. In facing certain death without plea or negotiation, you have shown courage that our greatest champions would respect. Ben said nothing. Around the chamber, he could hear the rustling of the Zalani as they shifted position, their attention focused completely on their princess and her words. This creates a problem, Princess Vexera continued. Our empire is built on the principle that the strong rule the weak. We conquer species that cannot defend themselves, enslave those who submit, destroy those who resist without honor. But you have shown that humanity possesses something we did not expect. Which is true strength. She gestured to the assembled court. Every being in this chamber is a warrior of the empire. Each has proven their worth in battle, demonstrated their courage under fire. And every one of them recognizes what you have done here today. She raised her voice so it carried throughout the chamber. This human has shown Veldar. By our oldest laws, by our most sacred traditions, that makes him worthy of warriors' respect. A new sound filled the chamber. Not the clicking of amusement or the hissing of displeasure, but something Ben had never heard from the Zalani before. A low, rhythmic humming that seemed to come from every throat at once. What does that mean? Ben asked. It means, Princess Vexera said, that I must reconsider everything the Zalani Empire believes about humanity. She turned away from him and addressed her court in their own language. The conversation was rapid, intense, full of sounds that Ben could not interpret. But he could sense the energy in the room, the way opinions were shifting, perspectives changing. Finally, the princess turned back to him. Commander Torres, she said formally, I hereby declare the planned invasion of your homeworld cancelled. Ben felt his knees nearly give out with relief, but he managed to remain standing. Furthermore, the princess continued, I propose that the Zalani Empire enter into formal negotiations with the human government for a treaty of mutual respect and cooperation. The humming sound grew louder, more complex. Ben realized it was approval, acceptance, agreement. Why? He asked. Princess Vexera gestured to his discarded armor. Because any species that can produce individuals like you deserves to be treated as equals, not subjects. Because true strength recognizes true strength. Because the empire grows stronger when it adds allies rather than slaves. She paused, her compound eyes reflecting the green light of the chamber walls. And because you have taught me that there are different kinds of strength. The strength to conquer is valuable, but the strength to choose dignity over survival, honor over comfort, truth over convenience, that is rarer and more precious. Ben bent down and began to put his armor back on. The Zalani watched in silence as he fastened each piece with the same careful precision he had used to remove it. You are free to go, Princess Vexera said when he was finished. A ship will take you back to human space with a full diplomatic escort. The message you carry will be simple, the Zalani Empire wishes to speak with humanity as equals. Ben picked up his helmet and tucked it under his arm. Thank you. Do not thank me, the princess replied. Thank your own courage. It has saved not just your world, but potentially countless others. When word of this spreads through the empire, other species will know that strength takes many forms. As Ben walked toward the chamber exit, every Zalani he passed made the same gesture with their arms that he had seen from the guard in his quarters. Respect. Honor. Recognition of a warrior. At the doorway, he turned back one final time. Princess Vexera stood beside her throne, watching him leave. Will we meet again? Ben asked. I believe we will, she replied. The galaxy is vast, but it grows smaller every day. And I suspect humanity has many more surprises in store for the rest of us. Ben nodded and walked away. 3 days later, he stood on the bridge of a Zalani escort vessel as it entered the Sol system. Behind them came a small fleet of alien ships flying diplomatic flags. Ahead lay Earth, blue and beautiful and safe. The communications officer turned to him with wide eyes. "Commander, we're receiving hundreds of messages from Earth Defense Command. They want to know who you are and how you convinced an entire alien fleet to escort you home." Ben looked out at his homeworld and smiled. "Tell them," he said, "that sometimes the best way to win is to walk away with your pride intact." Within hours, news of the human commander who had faced down an alien empire spread across Earth's networks. Within days, other alien civilizations began requesting meetings with human diplomats. Within weeks, humanity's reputation as a species of unbreakable moral courage had spread to every corner of the galaxy. And Ben Torres, the man who had chosen dignity over survival, became the symbol of everything that made humanity unique among the stars.